So, welcome everyone to the wellness. Today we're going to talk about being heart healthy. So, I'll just go ahead and get sharing. All right. So, today we're going to talk about ways that you can reduce your risk for developing heart disease and prevent it, hopefully. So, let's look at a few statistics. Coronary heart disease is the leading cause of death for both men and women in the United States. Uh, Okay, thank you, Cecily. Um, about over 800,000 people will have their first or recurrent attack within a year. There are 647,000 deaths annually, and over 90% will survive it thanks to great medical techniques that have been developed, but still, that's a lot of people to have it. And 10 to 11 million have angina pectoralis, which is like pain in your heart. First, stroke is the fifth leading cause of death. There are 795,000 who suffer new or recurrent strokes in a year. About 50,000 will die, and over 7 million stroke survivors are alive today. And women account for the majority, 57 to 60% of stroke deaths. So let's look at what it looks like in your arteries when you have heart disease. So let's look at the normal artery. It's all clear and open. But if we look over to the one on the right, we can see fatty deposits or plaques that are developing around the outside of your artery. And then also blood clots that can develop in there as well. So you can see a lot of it can be occluded or closed off because of these things. So what happens when you have a heart attack? The blood supply in that part of your heart, so the muscle is severely reduced or stopped because of one or more arteries being blocked. And because of that, it can really impact the functioning of the heart and destroy parts of it, even. So, how do we know if you might be experiencing a heart attack? So, there's chest discomfort or pain. So, you feel pressure, squeezing, or fullness. It could be in the center of the chest. It will last more than a few minutes or it goes away and comes back. Pain or discomfort in other areas of your upper body, like one or both arms, your back, your neck, your jaw, your stomach, can also have pain. Shortness of breath. This can happen with or without chest discomfort, so that's a good sign, with or without it, without the pain. Other signs, you could break out in a cold sweat, have nausea, or lightheadedness. These can all be signs, warning signs of a heart attack. And if you suspect it, if you or someone you know has chest discomfort, especially one or more of the other signs that we just talked about, don't wait longer than 5 minutes before you call 911 for help. Doing this will help you potentially save that person's life. Now, a stroke. There are multiple types of strokes. Ischemic is the most common type of stroke. So there's two types of ischemic. It's cerebral thrombosis. This is a blood clot forms and blocks the blood flow in the artery, bringing blood to part of the brain. or an embolism where a blood clot forms away from the brain and is then carried in the bloodstream until it lodges in arteries leading to or in the brain. Then there's hemorrhagic strokes, a couple types of those. Subarachnoid hemorrhage. This is the blood vessels and on the brain's surface rupture or break apart. Or you can have cerebral hemorrhage, which is a defective artery in the brain bursts, and it can cause by a head injury or a burst aneurysm. Aneurysms are blood-filled pouches that balloon out but don't quite break. How to tell if someone is having a stroke. Sudden numbness or weakness of the face, arm, or leg, especially on one side of the body. So if you try to have a person smile and one side won't go up, that can be a sign. Sudden confusion, trouble speaking or understanding. Sudden trouble seeing in one or both eyes, trouble walking, dizziness, loss of balance or coordination. And then a severe headache with no known cause. So if these symptoms appear, call 911 and get medical attention immediately. I had a colleague who was having a stroke. He just didn't feel quite right, but he thought, oh, it's nothing. I'll just wait to call. Well, because of he didn't get right in, he had severe disability because of that and ultimately ended up dying prematurely. So it's very important. If you think you might be having signs and symptoms of either a heart attack or a stroke, get medical help immediately. Even if it turns out not to be a heart attack or a stroke, it's better that you get help immediately just so you know and you don't let things go longer than need be. So what are the risk factors of heart disease? So these are the risk factors that we're going to talk about today in a little more detail. But before we do that, let me see. I'll see if I can get you guys to respond to me. How many of you guys have a family history of heart disease or having a heart attack or a stroke just in your immediate family? It's something to think about. Ah, thank you, Cecily. You can respond to the chat. You can unmute and talk if you're able to do that. So on my family, my mom, we suspect that she's been having little mini strokes, but it's never been diagnosed because they can't quite catch it if they don't catch it right in the middle of doing that. And my dad had congestive heart failure, so although it wasn't quite a heart attack, it was still heart disease. So yeah, so I guess I probably went ahead of myself, but let's go forward. Age. For men, if you're over 45, you have a greater risk of heart disease. And for women, it's over 55. And I think some of the problem with women is it has to do with menopause. So again, how do you know if you're going to have premature coronary artery disease or heart disease? So if you have a male first degree relative that was less than 55 when they had this heart disease issues, or a woman first degree relative that was less than 65, then you know that you might have some premature heart disease. So if we have a family history, it'll probably show up earlier if we have problems with that. Otherwise, everybody else, if you get over a certain age, you also have a greater risk, regardless of your family history. So looking at some blood levels, we encourage you guys to get your blood work done or a wellness checkup once a year. And there is even an incentive if you don't know about it. If you get blood work done or have some sort of wellness checkup once a year, we will give you an incentive of $50 if you just let me know. And then I pass it on to Camille, but I am the one that keeps track of it. So cholesterol, you want your cholesterol to be less than 200. What they consider borderline high is 200 to 239, and then high is 240 or above. So LDL, which is your low density lipoprotein or your bad cholesterol, and there's different LDLs, but we'll just talk about the total LDL. Optimal, they like that less than 100. Near optimal or above, just barely above is 100 to 129. Borderline high, they consider is 130 to 159. High, 160 to 189, and very high, 189. Your good cholesterol, the good cholesterol or high density lipoprotein helps to clear out cholesterol deposits from your arteries. So definitely want to have a good one of those. So low is considered less than 40 for men or less than 50 for women, and high would be greater than 60 for either one of those groups. Triglycerides, normal is less than 50, and then you can see up to 199 is borderline high, up to 499 is considered high, and then very high is over 500. And then blood pressure levels, they've just started adding lots of levels there. So really they want you to be less than 120 over 80. But if you're slightly above that, they're probably not going to be that concerned. But as you start getting into these stage ones and stage two or severe hypertension, then they'll probably start to work with you on finding ways to reduce your blood pressure, whether you try to do it naturally or you take some sort of medication to help with that. If you have this hypertensive emergency, then it's over 180 over 120. And then you also need to have symptoms. A lot of times they say blood pressure is kind of silent, whether you have high blood pressure or not. But if you get too high, you will start to have some symptoms of high blood pressure. So if you just kind of feel off or you're having pain in weird places all of a sudden, that could be high blood pressure. So check it yourself or find a way to check it to see what's going on. So we recommend that you get regular health screenings, and that's why we have that incentive that I talked about previously. Cholesterol at least every 4 to 6 years. But if it's high or if you have other risk factors of heart disease, then they recommend more often. Blood pressure at least every 1 to 2 years, more often if it's not optimal or you have other risk factors of heart disease. But blood pressure, they check that every time you go into a doctor. So that one's easy to get. Diabetes. They've found what they call some sort of this metabolic syndrome where lots of these diseases are seen together. And but diabetes is one of those metabolic syndrome diseases. If you have diabetes, you are at least you have a 2 times greater risk of developing coronary heart disease than you do if you don't have diabetes. And they can develop earlier and result in premature death because of it. People with diabetes are also 2 to 4 times more likely to suffer a stroke. And then more than 65% of the deaths in people with diabetes are attributed to heart and vascular disease problems. The next risk factor is tobacco use. Regardless of whether it's smoking, chewing, any sort of nicotine at all, whether you're vaping, whatever, you're going to have a higher risk of coronary vascular or heart disease than those who do not smoke. People who have secondhand smoke, unfortunately, also have some problems with higher risk of coronary heart disease. Even if it is not as high as if you actually smoked, you're still going to have a greater risk than if you weren't around the smoke. So really, we recommend that you try and live without tobacco of any sort or nicotine. If you have or know someone who does smoke, but they do quit, you're you probably will never have the level of no coronary heart disease as someone who had never smoked, but it improves significantly if you quit and stay away from those things, which is good news, I feel, to those who have smoke or tobacco issues. Unfortunately, weight is also associated with heart disease. Excess body weight, especially around the waist, gives you greater risk. Why is it a problem? It increases your heart's work, raises the blood pressure, cholesterol, and triglycerides, lowers your good cholesterol, and you're more likely to develop diabetes if you have excess weight or fat. So, besides BMI, which I think the medical community is at least somewhat going away from it a little bit. Thankfully, I don't really like the BMI um, measurement. It doesn't quite take into like your level of muscle and whatnot. So we have these other things like waist circumference. A high waist circumference increases the risk of cholesterol and high blood pressure and other heart disease risk factors when you have a high BMI. So what are we looking at here? For men, it's a waist circumference of greater than 40 degrees, and for women, it's a waist circumference of a greater than 35 inches. So how do you measure this? It's right around the belly button. It might be a little bit higher than the belly button, that you could measure yourself with just one of those flexible measuring tapes to see what your waist circumference is. Activity is the next issue. The more we are inactive, the greater our risk for heart disease. Exercise has a lot of benefits, increases your good cholesterol, decreases your triglycerides, it helps to manage your weight, it may lower your blood pressure and help control diabetes. So all of those, it really affects all of those manageable risk factors that you have. We don't really have much control over our age, and we don't have control over who our family is, but some of these things we do have control of, and exercise helps improve all of those. What are they recommending? They recommend that you get 150 to 200 minutes of moderate intensity exercise a week, or 75 to 150 minutes of vigorous. How do you tell the difference? Does anybody know? Let's take a break from looking at a PowerPoint. Can you tell the difference between moderate intensity versus high intensity? What do you think?
Your heart rate.
Well, yeah, for sure. But there's a way you can do it without checking your heart rate too. So let's say you're walking or running, but you can still talk. You're moderate. If you can't, but you can't sing. And then if you're vigorous, you're less likely to be able to talk very easily. Thank you, Robert, for trying though. You're right. If you have like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or a fitness tracker, that monitors your heart rate. That definitely can show you if you're into more of a moderate or vigorous level. So, who has a fitness tracker that they use regularly? I guess I'm going to stop that again.
I have
Go ahead.
one. That's why I said that. That's how I track it. Is I wear my watch wherever I go.
Right. Yeah, that's the easy way to do it. So we've got a couple of people who admit to having a fitness tracker. That's great. That definitely helps. All right, back to the PowerPoint. All right, so even if you're not very active, you don't have to actually meet those guidelines in order to see improvement or health. Just even shorter amounts of exercise, breaking up your workout, getting up and walking around every hour or when you can, just for a few minutes can really actually benefit your health. Even doing household chores or yard chores, stuff like that, anything that kind of gets you up and moving will benefit your health. All right, so now we're on to heart healthy eating. So really the two diets that they are currently recommending for heart health is the Mediterranean or the DASH diet. Both of these are very similar, and mostly they emphasize eating whole foods like fruits and vegetables, whole grains, legumes, lean proteins, and healthy fats, and limiting that salt, added sugar, added fat, and processed foods. So let's talk a little bit about each one of those. And even if you don't do all of them, you could just start working on one of them and it's going to help your heart and help your health. So to eat more fruits and vegetables, the reason why we might want to do this is that they're packed with vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants that support the heart and reduce inflammation in our body. And I don't know if you've heard this or not, but inflammation is kind of a sign of disease. So even if it's not heart health, if you have inflammation in your body, it can be a sign of other things that are not right. So reducing it by eating more antioxidants and other phytochemicals, what they call, that help your heart and help your body to not have inflammation is going to help you prevent disease. Another reason to eat fruits and vegetables is they're low in calories. So they're less likely to cause you to gain weight unless you add lots of fat to them. And they're rich in fiber, which right now is a big push in society to increase or improve your fiber intake, and also your protein. So we'll talk about protein in a little bit. They recommend that eat a variety of colors because not one fruit or vegetable has all the nutrients that you need. And the sign that you're getting different nutrients from different fruits and vegetables is the color that they are. So, fruits or vegetables to choose. Fresh or frozen fruits or vegetables are great. Your lower sodium canned vegetables and your fruit packed in water or 100% juice. Good choices. Coconut, and the reason why they recommend limiting coconut is because it is high in palm and other tropical oils, which are saturated. And there's some disagreement about how healthy coconut oil is. So that's kind of but the heart disease people are know it has saturated fat. We know saturated fat is a problem. So that's why they like say limit that. Vegetables that have the creamy sauces or they're fried or they're breaded can canned fruit that's packed in that heavy syrup or your frozen fruit that has the added sugar. Those ones are not as healthy as if you get some of these other ones. So, how can we eat more fruits and vegetables? You can keep washed and cut up vegetables in the fridge. You keep the fruit on a bowl in a bowl on your in your kitchen or like on your table. Why would we do this? This just makes it easy to grab them. So I noticed that even like at my house, I had some little oranges, those clementine or halo oranges, um, in my fruit drawer in my fridge. And because they were there, my kids were actually grabbing and eating them. And they're not the ones to particularly eat a lot of fruits and vegetables. So that was a happy surprise for me. You can choose recipes with vegetables or fruits. You can include vegetable stir-fry dishes. You can mix fresh fruit into salads. Or you can just add them. You can just add them to things that don't necessarily have it. So that's a fun way and a way to get a little more variety in the food you eat is to just start adding a couple of fruits or vegetables and things that don't currently have them. All right, the next recommendation is to choose whole grains. They're packed with fiber and other antioxidants, oxidants, and phytochemicals. The reason why is they've been found to improve cholesterol levels and reduce your blood pressure and lower your risk of heart disease and stroke and chronic inflammation and help control blood sugar because of the fiber and the antioxidants and other things that are good things that are in them. So here is some list of things to choose versus things that might not be as healthy for you to choose. Um, your whole wheat flour, your whole grain bread, it should say it's 100% on it to be considered completely whole grain. Even if it has some whole grains, but not all whole grains on the ingredient list, it's better than none. So your brown rice, your barley, your buckwheat, whole grain pasta, oatmeal, your steel cut oats, or your regular rolled oats are all examples of whole grains to choose. And the other grains, they are less likely to have any fiber, and because they also remove quite a bit of the grain when they refine it, it has less antioxidants and vitamins and minerals and other nutrients in it too. So basically, you're getting the starch. So how can you eat more whole grains? You want to make a simple swap with a refined grain. Let's say you eat a sandwich every day on white bread. Well, you could try making it with a whole grain bread. Simple things like that are some ways to increase the whole grains. You could try some new whole grains out there, quinoa, farro, barley, some of those other things that are out there that are less common for us. You could try those and see if you like them. They also recommend that you include more legumes. Legumes are beans, peas, lentils. The reason why they recommend them is it's packed with fiber, plant protein, and antioxidants. So they've been shown to lower your bad cholesterol, reduce your blood pressure. They're rich in soluble fiber, which can help with cholesterol levels. They help manage your blood pressure, blood sugar, and reduce inflammation. So how can we choose good legumes that help us? So any of your lentils, red, brown, black, or beluga. Chickpeas are great. Black and navy beans, sprouted legumes are good. Organic low sodium canned beans are good. Fermented soy products are also good. Um, then the raw or undercooked kidney beans, not recommended because if it's not cooked, then there's a compound in the beans that can be negative, has a negative impact on your health. Any processed vegan food or meat alternatives are not particularly great for you. And then the beans where things have been added to them, like your baked beans and your fried beans, are not as healthy as just plain. So, like vegetables, beans, you can add lentils, peas can be added to familiar dishes that you already do that don't have them in, like salads, casseroles. You can blend them into dips and sauces. You can be sneaky about them and find recipes or experiment and see if you can use them to make recipes and that your family doesn't even know that they're there, but you've added them in. And then into your breakfast to boost it. You can do legume-based snacks. There are meatless alternatives that you can use beans with, and just the the canned beans are really easy and convenient. So now we're going to talk about low-fat protein sources. Right now, getting more protein is a big push. Do we all need that much protein? Well, there's some debate about that. But if you're on one of those weight loss shots or pills, you definitely want to make sure that you're getting adequate protein to help reduce the amount of muscle that you lose because of it. So, what are some low fat protein sources? Excuse me, lean meat, poultry, and fish, your low fat or fat free dairy products, eggs. These are your best sources because they're complete sources of protein. They they recommend choosing lower fat meat, poultry, and fish just because a lot of it, or at least some of it, is going to be your saturated fat, which has been linked to heart disease. Fish can be healthier than other high fat meats. The fatty fish is usually the good fish. The cold water helps develop certain essential fatty acids that are really good for your heart and your body. Legumes also kind of fit into they're high in fiber, but they're also high in protein. So they're a great plant source of protein, not a complete protein, but a good protein choice. So we kind of already talked about what to choose. Let's look a little bit about what to limit or avoid. Your full fat milk and other dairy products. Now, there is a little bit of controversy there. So, my personal opinion is that if you're not going to drink milk unless it's full fat, then you probably should, but maybe not drink a ton because it is higher in calories and fat. But if you can, probably go to a lower one, especially if heart disease is a problem for you. Your organ meats, they're very high in cholesterol and fat. Fat and fatty and marbled meats, which a lot of people love because they taste really great, but again, higher in those fats that we know have been linked to heart disease. Spare ribs, your hot dogs and sausages and bacon, all of the processed meats, not only fats, but sodium and other added food additives, making them the way they are not great for your health. And then fried and breaded meats can also be problematic because of the fat and the usually some sort of grain that you're adding to it. So if we are to choose healthy fats, we would choose unsaturated fats. And there are two types of unsaturated fats, monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats. Your monounsaturated fats are MUFAs, the abbreviation for it, olive oil, avocados, avocado oil, nuts, seeds. Your polyunsaturated fats include the essential fats, which are your omega-3 and omega-6 found in your fatty fish. Nuts, especially walnuts, are high in those certain omega-3s, omega-6s. Flax seeds, soybean, and sunflower oil, all really good choices. Your unhealthy fats are your saturated and trans fats. So saturated fats, we're looking at animal fats, processed meats, tropical oils like palm and palm kernel. You can't remember all of them, but ones like that and some other saturated fats. Your trans fats, thankfully, they have reduced it quite a bit and because they had to include that on the label, but you can still get it for your fast food, baked goods, pastries, cakes, and other partially hydrogenated oil. The next thing is to limit salt and sodium. So some sodium is found naturally in foods like celery and milk, but most of the problem we have is that it's added when they process foods. Because let's be honest, some of us are kind of addicted to salt and sodium. So manufacturers use that knowledge to sell more food and get us to eat more food. So eating foods with lots of added sodium can lead to high blood pressure. Table salt also contains sodium, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So what do they recommend? Well, first of all, what does the normal American take in a day? Usually around 3,400 milligrams of sodium. The American Heart Association recommends getting less than or equal to 2,300 grams of sodium a day. So we're over 1,000, most of us. And for heart health, like those with high blood pressure or other heart problems, they really recommend that you go super low at less than or equal to 1,500 milligrams a day. So how can you eat less sodium? You can limit the salt that you add to the food at the table or while cooking. But if you're going to have any salt, it's better to get that salt than the salt from convenience foods and processed foods. Why? Because that salt has iodine added to it, which can help with your thyroid. If you don't have any iodine in your diet, then it might affect your thyroid negatively. So if you're going to add any salt, do it at the table with iodized salt that you probably most of the salt that you buy is going to have that in it. The salt you get from convenience and processed foods doesn't usually have the iodine added to it. So you're only getting the sodium, or you're not getting any of the other good stuff. Another way to eat less sodium is to choose condiments carefully. So what has less sodium? Just your natural herbs and spices, salt-free seasoning blends, those canned or prepared meals that say reduced sodium or no added sodium, and reduced sodium versions of condiments. So what do we know is high in sodium? Table salt. About a teaspoon of table salt a day is about equals 2,300 milligrams of sodium. Tomato juice is pretty high. Condiments, regular condiments are pretty high. Restaurant meals, processed foods. All right, let's move to the last one we're going to talk about, added sugars. So sugars can be natural or added. Naturally occurring sugars are found in your fruit and milk. Added sugars are sugars or syrups that they put in food during preparation, processing, or even added at the table. So why do we care? Our bodies don't need sugar to function properly. Added sugars contribute zero nutritional benefit. All it really does is it adds calories, which can contribute to being overweight or obese. And the extra calories from added sugars also is converted to triglycerols. So if you eat a lot of sugar, added sugar, you actually might be increasing your triglyceride level, which is a marker that we talked about earlier. So it has a plan, it has a part in heart disease. So how much sugar is okay? For men, up to 9 teaspoons a day is okay. So don't get more than that. That's about 150 calories. Women, it's 6 teaspoons, usually just because they eat less, because they have less. They're just not usually as tall, so they have less muscle. So whatever. They just get gypped out of sugar. 6 teaspoons instead of 9. How can you identify added sugars? Well, one of the changes that have been made to the new nutrition facts labels was adding in how much of the sugar content was added sugars. So how do you find it? So on your nutrition facts label, you go to total carbohydrates, and under the carbohydrates is your total sugars, and right below that is your added sugars. What if you don't have a nutrition facts label? Well, you can look at the ingredient list. Does it have stuff on there that ends in an OSE? A lot of sugars have OSE: sucrose, glucose, fructose, lactose, maltose. All of those are sugars. And then you can look up and find other names of sugars. There's a lot of them. Raw sugar, a lot of syrups. So just familiarizing yourself with what added sugar names are so that you can identify them if you're concerned about sugars in your diet. Some tips to consume less sugar is limit your sugary drinks, your sodas, your sports drinks, fruit flavored drinks, sweetened coffees. Avoid hidden sugars. They tend to be in foods that you think are healthy, but they'll say they're fat-free or low fat. So they've done that, but in order to still maintain the same palatability and the same texture and flavor that they want, they've added sugars to them. Increasing your fiber, because the more fiber you eat, the more it helps manage fat absorption. It kind of offsets sugar. And then watch for the fructose that you eat, even if you're drinking 100% fruit juice, which can be healthy in small amounts. If you're drinking a lot of it, it can impact your triglyceride levels. All right, so that's all I have today. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions that they want to have addressed? Hearing none, you're still welcome to speak up if something occurs to you. But if not, thank you for joining me today. I will make sure I give you credit for it, and I hope you guys have a great day.